All right, you guys ready to go?
Yep.
All right.
Yes, sir.
I am leaving the call now.
3, 2, 1. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Grinders Live, brought to you by DraftKings. And I am here, STL Cards, for perhaps a limited time, maybe an hour. There is a nice line of storms going through the area right now, and if you look at our weatherman, Kevin Roth, actually just posted his weather update in the forums, and they actually have issued a PDS, which is a potentially dangerous situation for Chicago for tonight's game, which makes that Angels-White Sox game a little bit intriguing. But if you look at the radar, there's a huge line of storms heading from Iowa into Illinois and basically headed straight for me here in about 10 minutes. So I may drop out at some point during the show, but as long as I have power, I am in my basement, so I'll be good to go as long as the electricity holds out. So for now, I'm here with Draft Cheat. Peter, what's going on this afternoon?
Oh, just another night of baseball. You're certainly right about the weather, and stay safe there. Those storms look very substantial. If you look at the radar, it's basically a cell the size of the state of Iowa. When it does get to Chicago tonight, and I certainly think it will, I don't think they're going to come back out and play. So, there are some good plays from that Chicago game, but you might only get 6 or 7 innings out of your guys. Hard to say at this point, but it's a very very big storm. So I hope everyone stays safe out there. Fun night of baseball here. Otherwise, a lot of good pitching matchups in my opinion. And I know at our sponsor DraftKings, the big 100K perfect game tonight. Also, down to 20 in the punch-out. I know you have 3 tickets left cards, so good luck in that.
Yeah, thanks. Trying to decide how to roll my lineups for that since we go from 20 down to 8 after tonight. So it's basically like a little bit of a juiced-up version of a double-up tonight, trying to get from 20 down to 8. So obviously some tinkering to do with that Angels game. Those storms are moving at like 60 miles an hour. So I think they'll get to Chicago right at about game time tonight. Really makes it interesting. So I made sure I have my smartphone fully charged in case we do lose power. There's nothing worse than losing power right before a lineup's locked. That's pretty much a nightmare. So luckily we have enough technology now with phones and iPads and stuff that you can usually have an alternative handy. But nothing worse than not having access to anything in front of you.
Yeah, especially on like FanDuel, you can't multi-export a lineup.
Yeah, the export, yep.
From mobile, so that's always a dangerous situation. For once in a while, my internet will go out just kind of without for any reason. So you always kind of worry about those things. Everyone gets affected by something like that, or a lineup export mistake. But those are the mistakes you don't want to make or don't have happen to you as a high volume player. They can be really costly.
Yeah, it can definitely. It's hard in DFS to go on tilt from getting upset, but that's one of the things that can really tick you off. It's like an export. It happened to a good friend of mine that just started playing a little bit and exported the wrong team one time and didn't realize it till after lineups locked. And it happens to everyone. The good news is that once it happens to you once or definitely twice, you won't make that same mistake again. But the weather, you really can't control that. So hopefully, and another factor is, do you really want to risk people getting in their cars and trying to drive, through that storm to that game? I wouldn't be surprised if once that cell hits, they just decide maybe even to call it early. But I haven't seen anything out of Chicago just yet. Just that I wouldn't plan on using any of the players from that game as of now, and it looks like Kevin Roth agrees with that analysis.
Yeah.
So
I think there's some chance they will postpone the game if the storm stays on that track and they know that it's going to hit 2 hours into the game and delay. I think it would be smart to cancel it, just given the severity of the storm, and I think it's going to last a couple hours when it gets there. So
yeah, and it's dumping heavy rain, so you could get a saturated field. So basically, we'll remove the White Sox and Angels players from the discussion. Obviously, a lot of the Angels bats were in decent spots against Hector Noesi tonight, but as it stands now, I'm not going to be using any of them, and we'll see if we get any further word on that before lineups lock.
Yep, I think that's fair. Let's jump right into starting pitching. I think there are a lot of ways you could go tonight. No true aces on the hill, but a lot of kind of secondary guys. Some good pitchers. and some decent matchups out there. There are kind of a lot of number twos going on the hill tonight, some guys that have emerged. I could make a case for a number of guys. Why don't you talk to me about kind of who your favorite ones are? And I think there's at least a chance we'll have some differing opinions, because there's some different ways you could go.
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, you could, like you said, you can make an argument for a few different guys. I think Jordan Zimmerman will be the popular option tonight, especially on FanDuel with as big of a favorite as he is. I mean, that line is over -200 for the Nats. With how important the win is on FanDuel, plus the Rockies lineup being a little bit watered down with Cargo on the DL and Dickerson out of the lineup tonight, as we were talking about before the show. I think Zimmerman's probably your safest bet for a win tonight. I don't know as though we can expect him to keep up the same strikeout totals that he's been putting up over his last 3 or 4 starts, but especially on FanDuel where he's not ridiculously priced, I think Zimmerman's a great option. DraftKings, though, he is quite pricey. Don't know as though I'll be using him a whole lot over there. I think you can go down a little bit, and there's quite a few guys kind of in that $8K to $9,500 range that you can make really solid arguments for. I know a lot of people will be on Latos against San Diego. If you look at some of his metrics, he's really been underwhelming since coming back. His swinging strike rate is way down. But it is the Padres in Petco, and he's just a talented pitcher. So I'm not enamored with him tonight, but really without the other aces on the mound, you really have no choice but to at least have some exposure to him. So I will have some of Matt Latos. And also really like Alex Wood, kind of worried about the pitch count on him. But the Mets are a team that has struggled against left-handers all season, and they're missing their best bat against lefties in David Wright. They did hit around Scott Kazmir a little bit last week, but other than that, not a ton of success against lefties. So I don't mind Alex Wood tonight. And you could make a case for Corey Kluber as well, especially in a GPP. I think he'll get overlooked tonight against the Dodgers, but he's got really good stuff, gets a lot of strikeouts. There's a bunch of cheap guys. I mean, I'm not opposed to going with a really cheap guy in a GPP if you want to throw out a Taijuan Walker or something like that. I wouldn't be opposed to going cheap, especially on multi-pitcher sites tonight, because there aren't very many aces, and that could save up some salary to get some of the big bats out there tonight.
Yeah, we'll talk about the big bats, but a few of the guys, in Baltimore in particular, I think the cat's out of the bag on guys like Adam Jones and Nelson Cruz. But, just given how many pretty good pitchers are going tonight, it's not a full slate. They have way higher projections than I think the other guys around them.
Yeah.
So it's a night when I really want to get those guys. I know they're going to be heavily owned, but they're just in such a good spot against Joe Saunders. They both crush lefties. It's a good park. Saunders can't get righties out to save his life. So, in my opinion, you kind of got to do what you got to do to get some of those Baltimore bats in there. Whether that means ditching Zimmerman to get guys like Wood, or you mentioned I think even Jesse Hahn and Zach Wheeler could be in okay spots. A lot of ways you can go. I'm not going to fade the big bats tonight. I think that'd be a mistake. You talked briefly about Zimmerman's strikeout rate, if he can maintain that. He's actually been kind of better in every area all season long. If you look at a lot of his advanced metrics, throwing harder, generating more swinging strikes by far than he ever has in his career, up around 11%. That's kind of up among the league leaders, and that's a rarity for him. He's also throwing first pitch strikes 70% of the time. That's a lead indicator of command, of a low walk rate, and that's second only to Kershaw, I believe, in all of baseball among qualified pitchers. So a lot of good signs around Jordan Zimmerman. I know a lot of people got burned by him early in the year, but he looks like the real deal to me. The Rockies lineup, not especially intimidating tonight. They don't have Corey Dickerson in there. They've got Brandon Barnes in there for him, so that's a big downgrade. Obviously, Carlos Gonzalez. I'm pretty high on Zimmerman tonight. You're gonna have to pay for him, but I think it's worth it. And I'm with you on Alex Wood. I like his matchup a lot, especially without David Wright, but you have to worry a little bit about that pitch count.
Yeah, do you think, I believe he went 7 innings in his last start, but only threw 79 pitches. 90 a reasonable expectation for tonight? If they let him go 90, I would say, hopefully he can get through at least 6 innings. I don't know as if they'll let him go beyond that. Yeah,
you'd have to imagine, that he'll get to go a little bit more than the 79 pitches he went last time. Obviously, he's an efficient pitcher. You just worry that, if they're not going to be relying on him to go deep in the game to begin with, what if he throws, 75 pitches through 5 innings and has a rough 5th inning, gives up a couple of runs, could maybe be pulled really early. I really like to target guys that managers let work through their troubles. We talk about guys like Hamels, Price. I mean, obviously those guys are true aces, but they don't get pulled early, and they get to, even if they have a bad inning, give up a couple home runs, they can come back and save your night for you, rack up some strikeouts in the later innings. I don't know if that's going to happen for Alex Wood tonight. Given that there's no true aces on the hill, maybe no pitchers in that position, but certainly a big worry there, as far as his floor for me.
Yeah, I mean, do you like him better than guys like Kluber or Hahn that are kind of in that same range of prices, like 85 to 9K on DraftKings?
I think so. Just given that he's in the National League, the Mets lineup looks really bad today.
Yeah, it does.
And Alex Wood can get right-handers out. He's got a wicked changeup, and if you just run through that lineup, there are a lot of strikeouts in there. And some of the best bats in the lineup are lefties, so they should be in for a bad time. Guys like Granderson, Duda, those are the guys that might be able to hurt you, but probably not against Wood. So, good Park as well. I mean, he's a great option tonight. I think you just hope you can be efficient and work deep in the game.
Yeah, the first few innings will definitely be key if you're rostering him. Hopefully he can get through those without a whole lot of trouble, get some confidence, and keep his pitch count down. Let's talk for a second about Jake Arrieta. I know a lot of people have mentioned him today. It kind of depends on what site you're on. I mean, Draft Street, he's the most expensive pitcher on the board. Certainly wouldn't even consider him there, but his numbers this year at least warrant a mention. Tough park to pitch in Fenway tonight against the Red Sox. And, you certainly can get both sides of the debate, whether you think he's either turned a corner or is pitching over his head. I don't know how much exposure I'll have on him tonight, if any, but he's certainly worth discussing for a minute.
Yeah, I think he's turned a corner to some extent. Now, do I think he's going to maintain an ERA in the low 2s throughout the year? No. If we compare him just to Jordan Zimmerman, in terms of like the indicators I want to look at, he has a lower swinging strike percentage, a much lower first pitch strike percentage. It does look like, and a higher, an in the zone contact percentage. So he's got, he doesn't have the indicators that would show that he would be able to maintain this level of performance. Now, that said, he has been pitching very well. The Red Sox have been pretty bad. I certainly wouldn't pay for him on Draft Street, top of the board type of salary, but on DraftKings, I certainly think he's in play, given his reasonable 8.4K salary.
Yeah, that's kind of how I took it. FanDuel as well, he's kind of middle of the pack, I believe. I kind of agree, in the same boat on Arrieta there. What about really cheap? I mean, is there any reason to get... to me, the nights where I tend to go cheaper with a second pitcher are if I'm paying up for a true ace, a guy like Kershaw, something like that. So I'm not... going bottom of the barrel tonight, but I mean, if you want to totally punt a pitcher spot, I can kind of see that tonight compared to some others. Is there anybody down towards the bottom that interests you at all, or are you looking elsewhere tonight?
Yeah, not really. The true bottom of the barrel guys, if we scroll all the way down on DraftKings, I can't roster Saunders, Flandy, Noisy. I don't think Phelps, I guess you maybe could. Ubaldo, probably not. Pino, probably not. I guess Danny Duffy might be kind of the first guy that I would throw on my team. He has shown the ability to have big games. Twins lineup, not all that scary. Decent park. So I could maybe make a case for him. I guess maybe make a case for Taijuan Walker, but that's a little scary to me. And then, Zach Wheeler, I think, is in a decent spot against this Braves lineup. They are running out 6 righty bats. I could see him racking up some Ks against, the Upton brothers, Chris Johnson, those kind of guys.
Yeah, he's the true definition of a GPP guy because he has these games where he just goes out and racks up Ks, and he has games where he tends to get shelled. So I like Wheeler for GPPs tonight. I've also got a little bit of exposure to Taiwan Walker in some GPP teams, large GPP field teams. Intriguing prospect, but I mean he's only on maybe 10% of my roster, something like that. So I think that takes care of the pitching. We can move to catcher, where it's not a position that I really care for tonight.
No.
I don't mind a total punt there tonight if you want to go that route. I think if I'm spending, really the only guy that I like is Wilson Ramos, a guy who hits left-handed pitching really well and seems to be healthy again. But I'm not married to the idea of rostering him across the board tonight either. So what are your thoughts on him and maybe the rest of the nice pool of catchers we have tonight?
Certainly agree that it's not a position of strength. Evan Gaddis out of the lineup. Mesoraco, in San Diego against a tough right-hander in Hahn. Rosario against Zimmerman, I don't like that. I'm kind of with you. I was initially on Wilson Ramos. I do like him, but he's hitting 8th.
Is he? I had not seen that. Well, that's disappointing.
So I don't know if I can pay, $4K on our sponsor DraftKings for a guy hitting 8th at home. That looks like 3 at-bats maybe for him. In front of the pitcher, might get walked and pitched around if there are guys on. It's going to be hard for him to have a big game out of the 8-hole at home. Just limited at-bats, probably limited opportunities. I do think the Nationals in general are going to score some runs tonight, but I don't know if I want to pay that full price for Ramos. Sorry, and I just tipped my my next pick. I do think Brian McCann, as disappointing as he's been, it's still a pretty good matchup against Chris Archer. He's still, in that good park for him that should profile well for his ability to hit home runs in Yankee Stadium with that short fence in right field. I expect him to get it going at some point. Hasn't really happened yet, but he's priced as a value play, so I don't mind taking him there.
Yeah, I think he's a nice pivot from Ramos. I should have thought to look at that Nationals lineup when it came out, knowing with Bryce Harper being activated that they would probably shuffle things around a bit. And now that they're fully healthy with LaRoche and Zimmerman and Harper all back, appears that Ramos' days of hitting cleanup or 5th are probably numbered for now. So I would agree. Seeing him hit 8, 4K on DraftKings is probably a no thanks to me. McCann I think is fine with his power, especially for GPPs, but I'm not opposed to a total punt. Just go bottom of the barrel. The Orioles catcher Joseph against Joe Saunders tonight. Why not? He's 2K on DraftKings, and fill the rest of your lineup with bigger bats. I suppose some people will probably gravitate towards John Jaso because that's what some people tend to do anytime they face a right-hander. Though, against Anibal Sanchez, I don't know if I'll be doing that tonight. But, based on the scarcity of the position, I think he'll be somewhat of a popular option.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm with you on the punt to Caleb Joseph. He's not a good hitter by any means, but sometimes, you just want to save the money to spend elsewhere. And it's actually something I'm interested to hear your take on this. But there have been a couple shorter slates where I've considered completely punting the second pitcher spot. On DraftKings, if you uncheck the probable pitchers box, you can get 2K guys that aren't even going to pitch. But it could allow you to get all the bats. So I think I've seen a couple guys do it on DraftKings. One guy in the Gold Glove did it and almost worked, where if there's a big game in Colorado on a short slate and no good pitchers going, you can completely punt the pitcher spot and get all the good bats, which no one else will do, and it could be a GPP leg up. So, we talk about doing it at catcher. Obviously, doing it at pitcher is a little, even more extreme, but just, always something to consider. It's always good to look at new kind of interesting avenues to find success.
Yeah, I did know that you could do that. I haven't done it myself, and actually, I don't think I've noticed a scenario where somebody did it, but it is interesting. It's a good point to bring up and file away for those Coors Field nights, or if you want to, say roster a Felix Hernandez with instead of rostering 2 6K pitchers, roster Felix Hernandez and a 2K guy.
Yeah.
Boy, that's interesting. Well, file that one away for the future notes to file.
If you just add up what you think the projected points might be, sometimes those 7, 8K pitchers, they're only going to get 10, 11 points. You can punt those guys, and then you get a whole different lineup than anyone else has. You get all the good bats when no one else can get them. It's the only way to get kind of a top of the shelf lineup across the board. So just an interesting point. Thought I'd bring it up. Something I've been considering lately. Let's jump over to first base. A more fun position than catcher, to be sure. I personally really like Anthony Rizzo tonight, going up against Jake Peavy, who's been pretty bad, kind of washed up in my opinion, been especially bad against a left-handed bats, and I like the spot for Rizzo tonight. He's pretty expensive on DraftKings, though.
Yeah, I was shocked to see him so high when I pulled up the first baseman, just behind Miguel Cabrera there and Chris Davis at the top. You have Rizzo. So, I mean, he had a great month of June outside of maybe the last few days, but there's a little bit of a lag time in those pricing adjustments, and I think his hot spell there from maybe the 10th of June through the 25th or so when he went on that home run binge has finally just been factored into his price. But certainly a good matchup against Peavy, who's been a home run machine lately. And first base isn't really as deep tonight as you would expect.
Yeah.
Because if you essentially take Pujols, Cron, and Jose Abreu off the table, there's three of your maybe better options for the night. Even though Joe Saunders is bad, I won't be rostering Chris Davis against him because he's at least respectable against left-handed batters, and Chris Davis at 5,600 on DraftKings is just too expensive against a lefty. So I'm not on him. I mean, Steve Pearce for the Orioles would be the better first base play in my opinion. He's $1,600 cheaper, $1,500 cheaper, and he's also outfield eligible. So I like him at that price. He's actually been hitting very well for them. Interested in your take on Adrian Gonzalez. He's kind of been up and down of late. Hasn't had a really good year, but has a tough matchup against Kluber tonight. Just a guy that across the industry, his price has really come down. Probably a factor of him not hitting well lately. But he's 4,300 on DraftKings, and just a name that I noticed kind of going through the list. Would you take a chance on him in a tough matchup tonight, or do you think that the matchup overrides the price tag?
Yeah, I don't think I'll be going there tonight. I certainly see your point. Not a guy I've been rostering a ton.
Yeah,
lately.
I haven't either.
I was kind of on him at the beginning of the year. He was doing really well, but West Coast guys, West Coast hitters, I just don't really gravitate toward very often. Just seems like too often those games are low scoring and not a lot of opportunities to have big fantasy nights. Certainly the price is there, so I don't hate it, but I have been impressed enough by Kluber to not target Dodgers tonight, even the left-handed ones. Kluber looks really good to me. He looks pretty legit. All his peripherals match up with his good performance. So not a team that I'm targeting tonight. I kind of have Kluber in the same boat as McHugh, where I maybe don't roster them a ton, but I'm certainly not targeting bats against them.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am with McHugh as well. I've gravitated towards rostering Kluber a little bit more lately, but I'm not on Dodgers bats tonight. If I wanted to go a little bit cheaper at first base, I don't mind the matchup for John Singleton if you're not on Taijuan Walker, because the price tag is there, $3,800. He has some upside, as a left-handed bat in that lineup, and he's batting cleanup tonight. So I think it's a decent spot for him. And again, it's a thinner position. With those guys off the board, I don't mind Carlos Pena as a GPP punt play against Ubaldo Jimenez. Basically, he's probably going to go 0 for 4 or go 1 for 3 with a walk and a homer. So I like him as a GPP play, probably not for cash games, though, and I'm sure he's probably still the minimum price on FanDuel.
Yeah, no argument there. I think that pretty much covers first base, I think, Not a huge position of strength tonight. It seems like that's the way across the board, though. In the interest of time, let's jump into second base. This position's pretty ugly, too. I still don't know where I'm going to end up here. Talk to me about kind of your favorite second base plays, because I'm struggling a little bit.
Yeah, I was on Kendrick a good bit this morning, but obviously that's out the door now. Rendon, I think, is a good play. He's always a decent option against a left-hander. Still up in the lineup. They haven't messed with him as a result of Harper coming back. So the price tag doesn't really grab me on him. 4,600 on DraftKings, pretty high for Anthony Rendon. But at a thin position, if you want to pay up for him, I think it's okay. Same with Kinsler against a left-hander. Again, fairly tough matchup. and a high price tag, but I can see the merits in rostering him as well. Robinson Cano's a guy I want to roster tonight, but like you mentioned with McHugh, I just don't like targeting bats against him, so I'll probably be off of Cano, even though I'm intrigued by his potential tonight. Otherwise, I think this is another position where you can, go a little bit cheaper and get your play. Jonathan Scope for the Orioles is 2,800. I have a decent amount of exposure to him. Catcher and second base seem to be the positions I'm punting the most tonight. But I don't mind spending up if you want to for a guy like Rendon or a guy like Kinsler.
Yeah, I'm definitely high on Rendon. I just think the Nationals in general are going to get to old Flondy tonight, who did okay his first time out, but the Nationals got some scary bats in there. It's a deep lineup right now. Anytime you have Ramos hitting eighth, and it's somewhat justified by the strength of their lineup, that they're in a good spot. So I like Rendon. Don't mind Kinsler, and you're right about Jonathan Schoop. Tonight might be a good night for the old wraparound stack, the 8-4 type of thing.
Yeah, I like doing that. It gets you some cheaper bats at the bottom, because obviously if you want to put in all those top 6 Orioles bats, you're not going to have much left to spend elsewhere. So it gets you some cheap punt plays and still gets you some exposure to that game. I'll pull the old rabbit out of the hat again. I know we've talked about him some of the times we've been on the air, but I don't see a problem with rostering Luis Valbuena again tonight. He's still cheap. I believe he's hitting 5th for the Cubs against Jake Peavy. I think he might be a decent low-cost option as well.
Yep, I'm on him too. You can play him in a couple different positions. I think he's a good way to go. He's got a really nice swing if you watch him play. He hits good hard fly balls out to right field pretty often. I'm not sure the park in Boston is ideal for him. If you don't pull it right down the line, it can be a little bit hard to get it out to right field. But the wind is blowing out, to center tonight, and Peavy kind of a shell of himself. So definitely on Valbuena. I think the Cubs are, maybe even an interesting stack tonight. A bunch of lefties with Starlin Castro, who's been good. So you could definitely go that way. And yeah, I'm with you on Valbuena.
Yeah, that's probably all I have for second base plays tonight. Don't know as if I'm going anywhere else beyond those guys that we've already mentioned. This doesn't relate to second base at all, but I meant to mention it when we were on catcher and first base. If you haven't checked the lineups recently, the Tigers have scratched Victor Martinez tonight with some hip soreness, but J.D. Martinez, who was supposed to get the night off, is in his place batting cleanup. So if you have V-Mart in your lineups tonight, be sure to get him out of there. With that, let's talk about third base a little bit.
Yeah. Third base, interesting spot. Miguel Cabrera, I don't mind him tonight, but not a perfect matchup. I don't know if I want to pay the full price for him. Adrian Beltre, I think you've got to consider him, even though it's right on right. That doesn't really hurt Beltre, and Ubaldo's not really a big splits guy either. So I think it's kind of a sneaky good spot for Beltre. We mentioned Rendon earlier. I think you can on DraftKings you can play him at second or third. I think he's a good play at either position. So those are kind of the top guys I'm looking at. Not a ton of cheap guys that I'm in love with. Are there any guys kind of near the bottom of the barrel that you're considering?
Not really. Beltre is pretty much the guy I am gravitating towards a lot tonight. I mean, I could have possibly made a case for David Freese, but again, that game is probably off the table. I don't see anybody. I mean, I think this is a position where you got to spend tonight, whether you play Rendon at third base or you do pay up for Miggy. But Beltre is the guy I've got in a good majority of my lineups tonight. Ryan Zimmerman, I think, is a decent play as well. We've talked about the Nationals being in a good spot for runs tonight. It's a shame that he had to start his suspension tonight, especially at 2,900 on FanDuel. For Manny Machado, who has 3 homers in the last 4 games, and that mouthwatering matchup he would have had with Joe Saunders tonight. But alas, his suspension is starting tonight, so he is off the table. I'm pretty sure he would have been a popular option across the board today. Yeah,
definitely. We mentioned the guys we like at second base. A lot of them are actually third base eligible. Schoop, Valbuena can all play third base as well. I think Rendon is second base, third base. So it's kind of interesting. 3 guys that I like. You can rotate them in and out if you're playing a lot of GPPs. I know we're both guys that like to throw a few lineups in there. So I think I'll be rotating at second base and third base, kind of among these cheaper guys, and maybe Rendon and some Beltre too. But it's not a ton of options to love for sure.
Yeah, and I think if you take one of those cheaper guys like a Valbuena at one of those spots or something, that's probably wise. Because you can spend at outfield tonight pretty easily. You can rack up on DraftKings maybe 3 5K outfielders and feel pretty confident with them. So before we do that, we'll move to shortstop. Another position that's a little bit thinner tonight. You mentioned him just a little bit ago. Even though it's right on right, don't mind Starlin Castro, who's been hitting very well. If you extrapolate his current numbers over a full season, very quietly on pace for about 25 homers and close to 100 RBIs, and a lot of that production has come recently. So I like Starlin Castro as kind of a mid-range option. Elvis Andrus is not a guy that I target a ton, but Ubaldo Jimenez, when he allows base runners, tends to allow a lot of stolen bases. And with patient hitters, he also walks a lot of guys. So guys like Andrus could create problems tonight by getting on base, singles and walks, and then stealing bases against Ubaldo. So I think Andrus has more upside than he normally has tonight in that matchup, so I'm on him. Even J.J. Hardy, perhaps it's the night for J.J. Hardy to hit his second homer of the year, especially on FanDuel where he's still 2,500. He's batting 290, so it's not like he's had no production all year, but the power numbers have certainly been dismal. So definitely maybe more so of a tournament play, but he's a guy I'm on tonight as well. And those are basically the 3 shortstops, Castro, Hardy, and Andrus, that I've got exposure to tonight.
Yeah, no problem with that. I'll mention a couple more guys. I could make a case for Brian Dozier against Danny Duffy, a guy that hits lefties well. You can run on Duffy a little bit. And Dozier also a really good hitter against the fastball, particularly against left-handed pitching. I did do a little more in-depth research on Dozier, and Duffy, a guy that throws fastballs almost 70% of the time. I like Dozier's chances to square one up tonight. It looks like the wind is blowing out to left field here in Minnesota. And I'm going to the Twins game, so I got to have some Brian Dozier on my team.
Yeah, I'm always jealous for Peter. For Peter Jennings, who lives out there in Denver.
Okay.
When he gets an opportunity to stack up a game, it's actually a reasonable play. If you go to a Twins game, or right now I go to a Cardinals game, we can't stack up our teams and expect it to generate positive returns for us. But it's always fun to do that when you're going to a game. At least with those pitchers tonight, you might have a shot if you put out a Casey or a Twin stack and just hope it hits. But he always brags about getting to go out to those Rockies games out there, and he can take all the hitters, and then it's always a good play. So
yeah,
I told him that wife and I are gonna try to make it out to Denver next year when the Cardinals are out there, and that'll provide an opportunity, because that seems to be the only time the Cardinals can score runs right now. But then again, they did have to run into the buzzsaw that is Clayton Kershaw yesterday. They get to face Tim Lincecum tomorrow, coming off a no-hitter. So they're off today. Thankfully, the Cardinals get a day of rest. They're just beat up right now with Walker out, Garcia out. Things aren't looking up for my Redbirds too much this year. But that's neither here nor there today. Anybody else at shortstop that you're considering? I mean, I don't really see the total punt as a viable play at shortstop tonight. There really aren't many options on the cheap, and I think we've mentioned enough guys kind of at other positions that you could get from.
Yeah, one last guy, Mookie Betts, is 2.3K on DraftKings. So
really,
you can play him at shortstop or outfield. I think he's a really good play. Obviously, the Boston prospect that looks like the real deal. He's got really good minor league numbers, highly touted. He's got speed. I haven't looked up his minor league splits. Obviously, the matchup against Arrieta, not ideal, but 2.3K, you can't argue with that price. I think he's in a pretty good spot. Yeah,
I just kind of assumed that he wasn't yet available. When I scrolled down through the list, I didn't see him down there. So yeah, he's in there batting 8th tonight. It sounds like the world is ending outside my house right now. My dog has actually run down in the basement, so I apologize if you hear some whining. I didn't want to keep my dog upstairs with the storm from heck on its way through the area, but Yeah, I think he's a solid play for 2,300 if you want to punt the position and allows you to fit the bats that you want in the rest of your lineup. By all means, especially on DraftKings, a guy with some speed. I know it's a big 7-point swing between a stolen base and a caught stealing, but boy, if you get a guy that say singles, steals a base, and scores, that's 10 points right there, and that's a pretty good night.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Can't argue with the price on a night where, we'll get to outfield in a second. You do want to get some of those top outfielders, and I think he makes a pretty good punt play. And also, there's no, second or shortstops that really scare you, that you think are going to wipe you out from a GPP or anything like that. I don't think there's really any double down candidates. You never know for sure, but it certainly doesn't look like it. So I think it's a decent position, to kind of go cheap and get the big bats. And speaking of those, let's get into outfield. I alluded to it earlier, mentioned it earlier. Adam Jones, Nelson Cruz, both 5.1K on DraftKings.
If you had to guess which one of those two guys is higher owned,
I would guess Nelson Cruz.
I would too, just because of his reputation against left-handers. I know, Jones' numbers in terms of weighted on base and such are basically identical to Cruz's, but Cruz just has that reputation as a lefty killer. So I would agree. I think he's going to be the more higher owned of the two, but I love them both.
Yeah. If you have to choose, who do you think you'll have more exposure to?
That's a great question. I think it'll be pretty close on both. I'd probably say Cruz myself, just because for GPPs for sure, I'd definitely say Cruz, just because I think he has a little bit more potential to maybe have a 2-homer night or something like that, and I think he's going to be more highly owned. I'll probably try to angle myself with the field on that because I think that both of them will be very highly owned. But hopefully taking both on quite a few rosters will pay dividends. And as I mentioned, you punt some other spots, it gets the ability to fit those guys in.
Yeah. What's interesting for GPPs, I don't know if I'm going to do it, but I don't know if anyone is going to take these other outfielders, guys like Cespedes, Upton, Puig, even Chu. I think everyone is going to want the Baltimore guys. Now, rightfully so. I think they, are going to have the best games of the night, but on a sport like baseball, we mention it all the time, anything can happen. These guys can easily go 0 for 4 on any given night. So it could be a night to go away from the field, if you're feeling a little frisky and go for some of these guys that don't have the amazing matchup, certainly going to be far less owned tonight.
Yeah, I would agree. I actually really like Chu tonight.
Yeah.
A guy who's not had the best season, up and down. He has been hitting a little bit better lately, but mention Jimenez allowing guys to steal bases when they get on. I think Chu's a decent combination of power and speed. I think he's a solid option tonight. Even Leonis Martin, I think, might be in a good spot for. I believe he's 3,500 on DraftKings. If you want some additional exposure to that game. Let's see. And you bring up a good point about guys like Cespedes and Puig. I think are decent GPP plays because of tonight of all nights. That they'll be lightly owned compared to what they have been in maybe better matchups. Certainly not something I would do in my cash game lineups tonight.
Yeah.
And again, if you're just getting with us, I know a lot of people kind of catch on throughout the show. JD Martinez was originally out of the Tigers lineup tonight. Now he's back in there batting cleanup with V-Mart being scratched. So if you want to roster him, his price has kind of flown through the roof on every site. But batting cleanup against the pitcher in Kazmir, who struggled in his last start, I think he might be an okay option. And then also, if you're just tuning in, be sure to check out the forum post on the weather. It looks like bad things for the Angels White Sox game, which I can vouch to because this system that's going through my place right now is heading straight east for Chicago. Should be there in a couple hours. And it's packing a heavy punch of rain and wind. So if you're wondering why we're not mentioning guys like Cole Calhoun and Josh Hamilton, certainly two guys I would have been on tonight, but not so much now with the weather. So, well, what about punt plays? There's some cheap options in the outfield tonight. Where are you looking at, say, maybe 3K or less on DraftKings?
Yeah, you're right. There are some options. To be honest, I'm kind of focused on those Oriole guys, but we mentioned Mookie Betts earlier. If you're not playing him at shortstop, he's definitely an option at 2.3K. You can play him in the outfield as well. I think that's a pretty strong play. Other guys I like, I believe, is Kiermaier in the starting lineup? Yeah, he is. He's been really good against righties, but it looks like he's hitting ninth today, so probably won't go down to him, although he's been really effective. I've been playing him a lot, and that's obviously been working out. Talk to me about some of the other guys you like down at 3K. I'm not seeing a ton there, but it sounds like you might have a couple other guys in mind.
Not anybody I was totally high on. I mean, I wanted to look at that Cubs outfield because I know a lot of those guys.
Like Chris Coughlin is 2.6.
Yeah, Coughlin 2.6, and I believe he's leading off. Was really the guy that I would get to, if I was looking to punt an outfield spot. But I would agree that those spots are fairly precious tonight and would be places to spend up more often than not, in my opinion.
Yeah. We do have a little bit of time here, so it's one thing that's really interesting. It's so easy to get caught up in, the individual matchups. But sometimes it can be, beneficial to think like a season-long player and say, how many more home runs is this guy going to hit the rest of the season? For a guy like Nelson Cruz, Adam Jones, they could hit another 20 home runs. Chris Coughlin, maybe maybe a few more home runs. So, it's tempting to go down to that 2.6 price tag, but if you think Nelson Cruz is going to get 20 more home runs, Coughlin's going to hit 4 more the rest of the way. He's going to get those home runs at some point. So you could make the argument, that Cruz is, 4 or 5 times more likely to go yard than a guy like Chris Coughlin. So that's the only reason that I'm so high on those guys. I just think they have such a good chance to go yard tonight. Some of the cheap outfielders, not so much. What about middle tier? Are there guys, between 4 and 5K? You mentioned you like Sin-Chu Chu. I'm with you there. Any other sneaky guys that you're looking at that you think might have a good game that most people won't be on?
Nobody specifically grabs me. I mean, Jason Worth is a guy I like, but more so at 2,900 on FanDuel.
Yeah.
I think Jason Worth is a guy that'll be fairly popular tonight. 4,100 on DraftKings. I think he's hit or miss at that price, but I think he's a decent contrarian play because even though Jason Worth hasn't been having the season that most people were expecting from him, if you look at his splits, he actually still does have decent numbers against left-handed pitching.
Yeah. No, I think that's fine. It's just a night when, to be completely honest, the top outfielders, Cruz and Jones, just stick out kind of like a sore thumb. It's pretty scary not to take them. Cash games, I think they're basically a must-play. GPP is obviously, you can certainly go in a different direction and benefit. Any interest in Bryce Harper on his bobblehead day today?
I don't think so on his first game back and it being against a left-hander. I don't think I'm going to go there tonight. I think he could be another guy that'd be contrarian in a GPP. I mean, if we expect the Nationals to put up some runs and don't expect the Rocky starter to be in very long, I think he could get some action off of the bullpen guys, but I don't think I'm going to risk it tonight.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat there. Any other outfielders you want to mention here? Otherwise, we can maybe go jump and look at a couple pick fives before we head out.
Yeah, that's probably. I mean, the good majority of my lineups are going to consist of those Baltimore guys with Chu and Leonis Martin maybe thrown in a spot here or there. I just don't have a lot of differentiation in my outfielders tonight. But chat, if you want to fire up some questions, do that. We'll get to those before we jump off the air. And you want me to pull up a pick five, or you got it?
Yeah, I've got up the Star Street pick five here. Some decent value here, I think, so we'll be good to run through it. First matchup, it's an easy one for me. We'll see if you agree with me. Sin-Chu Chu versus Robinson Cano.
Yeah, I really like Chu tonight. We both kind of mentioned that we don't target a ton of bats against McHugh. So, even though the public might gravitate towards the name value there with Cano, I'll take Chu there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cut and dry for me at least. Next one, Adrian Beltre and Anthony Rendon. I think this one's pretty close. Interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I do think it's close because I love the matchup for Rendon against the lefty, but I think I'll still lean towards Beltre there. I think his overall skill set and his power gives him a little bit of an edge.
Yeah, really close. I think I'll go Beltre here. I think Texas is projected for a few more runs. They are in a better park for hitters. So Beltre in a narrow race for me. Third one, Ellsbury and Rizzo.
I'll definitely take Rizzo. I know Ellsbury. I think he has some decent career stats against Archer the few times they faced off, but Rizzo's just got such a good matchup against Peavy tonight, and the way he's been hitting of late, I'll take him tonight.
Yeah, I got Rizzo by a good bit here. Averaging more fantasy points per game on the season than Ellsbury, and I think he has a better matchup. So Rizzo by a decent bit there for me. Next one, Ian Kinsler, and then another guy we didn't really talk about, Jose Altuve. Altuve, super hot.
He is, and he's just been stealing so many bases. Boy, that's probably the closest one we've had yet. I still, even though it's a tough matchup for the Tigers, I'll still gravitate towards Kinsler against the lefty, but I could probably be swayed the other way there. I don't think I have a whole lot of exposure to either guy tonight.
Yeah, me neither. A little bit scary. To be honest, I don't know what Tawan Walker's splits against right-handed hitters are in the minors. So I need to look those up. Altuve does struggle a little bit against righties, but if Walker is not dominant against right-handers, and if you can run on Walker, two things that, to be completely honest, I haven't looked up today. I might go back to Altuve, but as it is, given the information I do know, I'll lean Kinsler as well. Final matchup of the day on the Star Street Pick 5 here, we have Jason Worth and Billy Hamilton.
Well, I'll definitely take Jason Worth there. Mentioned I love his matchup. Even though the park factor really isn't a big deal for Billy Hamilton, Honda's been pitching very well and has some very good stats in the minors. I think obviously most people expect that to be a low-scoring game tonight, as most games are in San Diego. So I'll take Worth there.
Yeah, I'll lean Worth there too. Sounds like we agree on most of these. We have Chu over Cano, Beltre over Rendon, Rizzo over Ellsbury, Kinsler over Altuve, and Worth over Hamilton. So go ahead and load that up in the Pick 5 if you're feeling frisky tonight. Should be some decent value there. What else, Cards? What else can we discuss before we sign off the air here?
We have a few questions, so let's go through those. Okay. Let's see. Beltran's a guy we didn't talk about. Your thoughts on him tonight? Somebody was asking Beltran or Jason Worth. I'll stick with Worth there. Beltran just hasn't shown much this year for me.
Yeah, I think I would lean Worth there too. By a decent bit. I mean, Beltran's just getting old. He is going to decline in a hurry here at some point. Might be this year. I'll take the kidder in his prime and Jason Worth on that one.
Yeah. Rizzo versus Ortiz, another kid versus veteran there.
I'll lean Rizzo here, I think.
Yeah, I think that one's close. Ortiz might be a little bit under-owned tonight. If that's a GPP, he might make a sneaky play against Arrieta, but cash game, I'll probably lean Rizzo there.
Yep.
Let's see.
I got one here. Kyle Seager or Lonnie Chisenhall?
Who's pitching? Oh, that'd be McHugh. And I'm having him. Who's pitching against the Mariners tonight, or against the Indians tonight?
Against the Indians, I'm Bergeron.
Oh, that's here. That'd be Dodgers, so that'd be here. I'll take Chisenhall. He's right as well.
Yeah, I'll go the same way there. Although,
again, two guys I couldn't come to my mind who they were facing right away. So two guys I'm not on, but just those two, I'll take Chisenhall. I think he's got a little bit more upside there.
I'm normally a guy that plays a lot of Indians, and I don't think I have any Indians on my teams tonight.
It's that West Coast thing. They're just low-scoring games out there, and Dodger Stadium, a tough park to hit in at night. Ball flies there better during the day. So even though Dan Herron hasn't been great this year, I mean, you can easily see Kluber and Herron. You can see a 4-2 game there, and those guys just aren't going to be highly owned tonight. Could
be a sneaky play to take Indian stack, though. Certainly capable. When Herron does not have his location on, he's very hittable. So I could see the Indians certainly stringing together some hits. I think he can run a little bit on Herron. So could be interesting.
Somebody asked who the top gas can pitcher of the night is. I mean, is there any doubt that it's Joe Saunders?
It's always Joe Saunders.
Yeah, Joe Saunders is the gas can pitcher. Top pitcher, I mean, we've kind of both agreed on Zimmerman. Just too good of a matchup to ignore. I think a lot of people will be on Latos as well. Let's see. Any love for Nick Markakis? I mean, he's kind of the Orioles outfielder I would exclude because A, he's pricey, B, he doesn't have a ton of power, and C, it's a lefty-lefty matchup for him. So in terms of those Orioles outfielders, I think Markakis is the guy I can just kick to the curb.
Yeah, I think that's fair. No arguments there.
Let's see.
Here's
Top
one.
first baseman, which, I mean, top first baseman not considering Price, is it still Cabrera despite the matchup?
Pick 5, I would maybe go with him. Actually, you know what? I think I'll take Rizzo over anyone, just any matchup.
What about Jason Castro? He's a guy that I don't mind as a GPP play for a punt. He's got terrible numbers on the year, but he does have power. He does hit righties better than lefties. I certainly wouldn't use him in a cash game, and he is 3,600 on DraftKings. I'd lean towards a guy like McCann. But for a GPP, you never know. He could bring out a 2-homer night.
Yeah, don't hate it. Hitting 6th against, the inexperienced Taiwan Walker, who's supposed to be talented, but, as far as I know, I think his command might be an issue, so Castro might be able to run into a couple there. Probably will be under-owned. Don't hate on it at all. He's got that GPP upside, power upside that you're looking for.
Yeah, I would agree there. What if we had to pick, if we just had to pick, we've talked about quite a few of the Nationals bats, Rendon, Zimmerman, Worth. If you just had to pick one guy from Washington as your favorite hitter target, is it Rendon?
I think it's Rendon, although I think the best play on any site, if you factor in price, is the Jason Worth 2,900 FanDuel play.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that analysis. I like Worth is a guy that I actually just slotted in to my FanDuel Survivor lineups before the show to replace some of the Angels guys that I was taking out. 2,900, I don't think you can argue with that price tag on him on FanDuel. 4,100 on DraftKings, more of a take it or leave it. But so if you're not considering price, I would agree Rendon.
Yep.
That price tag on Jason Worth on FanDuel is pretty good. So any other pitchers? I mean, I'm struggling. How are people going to handle Matt Latos tonight? I mean, everyone's just going to slot him in because it's San Diego and it's Petco. But I know you like to look at those metrics like swinging strike percentages and stuff like that. If you look at his numbers and those type of things, they just aren't that great.
Yeah, I am not going to play Matt Latos tonight. So, just too scary for me. The metrics don't look good, and I know the matchup is there, but given how heavily owned I think he's going to be, I do like some of the matchups better. So I am off the Latos train. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that, but that's how I'm going to run.
Yeah, I don't think that's unwise at all. I believe he had 4 strikeouts, I think, against the Cubs in his last start. I know his velocity's down, and that swinging strike percentage is just really bad. So it's definitely the struggle with, in what type of contest do you want to, or with what plays do you want to plant your flag and take your stand against the guy that's going to be highly owned? And I think that might be a decent night to do that with Matt Latos. Still kind of weighing that in my mind, how I'm going to handle that.
The big thing with me is his velocity. When you couple that with his swinging strike percentage, it's just too scary. He doesn't seem like a guy, and certainly numbers are bearing that out right now, that is going to be able to thrive without his velocity.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem like a particularly clever pitcher. Probably a guy that's relied on his velocity, growing up throughout his time in the minor leagues and Major League Baseball. Without it, I think it's very questionable how effective he'll be. And then, given how popular it is to play pitchers in San Diego, just all the factors for me, it equals a fade.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to believe in that line of thinking tonight. I just wish it was a team other than the Padres. If it was the Giants or something, we of course then we wouldn't really even be talking about them tonight. But that's interesting. I'm anxious to see where the masses go on that tonight and see how it plays out, either for the people that take them and the people that don't. So. With that, we are pretty close to the 6:30 deadline. My power did not go out in this hour, so hopefully everything came through fine.
Yeah, I think so.
And out for the evening? Got something else? Or?
Nope, that's all. And good luck to you and your punch-out matchups tonight. I know that's a big sweat for you. Hopefully, you can get one through, or two through, or three through to the top 8. And good luck to everybody else. Big night in the industry as always. And go USA tomorrow.
All right, same here. Good luck tonight, everybody. Have a good one.